Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and I've got a question for you. What are they doing with your DNA? You know, you got that 23andMe kit. You love that kit. You were so excited to find out where you came from and what was going on with your lineage. You went to that Ancestry.com, and you thought nothing of sending your identity to a total stranger. But what if that total stranger was interested in your DNA? Or maybe not that stranger, but someone even more powerful, more significant, and that would be Satan himself. Well, why would Satan be interested in your DNA? Well, there's a Y chromosome marker in the DNA that points directly to the line of Aaron. That's right, Aaron, the high priest of the Bible. And if you know your prophecy, you know that it's going to be the high priest that heads up the Sanhedrin that calls for the return of Jesus. Well, Satan doesn't want that to happen. He's used everybody from Pharaoh to Haman to Herod to Hitler to Ahmadinejad to Iran and Hamas, Hezbollah, and all that to kill the Jews. Why does everybody want to kill my people? Because they want to thwart the return of the Messiah. And if Jesus doesn't come back, Satan rules this earth and remains prince over this earth. That is the plot line, the storyline of the weaponization of DNA, and how now technology can take your DNA and turn it, switch it on you and turn it into a virus that would specifically attack a particular bloodline. The book is called The Codist, The Mystery Behind Aaron's Robe, second edition. First edition sold out. Second edition available to you for a special price of $2.99. If you're interested in DNA and genetics and what the Bible has to say about all of this, get your copy today. I also want to encourage you to visit our website, ignitinganation.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page where it says special offers, and you're going to see the yellow cover of this book, my latest book, The 7 Laws of Abundant Living, Lessons Learned from the Tree of Life. Now, click on that book cover. We're going to ask you to give us your email address, but we're not going to send you spam because spam is not kosher, but we will send you the first chapter of this book. We take you on a journey in the Garden of Eden from the very dirt that God put on the ground that He made Adam out of, all the way out to the fruit of that tree. And we take you on a journey to 7 biblical truths, God using the things of the natural to reveal the things of the supernatural. Our guest this morning is Joe Horn, author of Time Bomb, a genocide of deadly processed foods, a national health epidemic more pervasive than anyone imagined. Don't be its next victim. Joe Artis Horn is a professional fitness and nutrition specialist, Chief Operating Officer of Skywatch TV, dog behavior expert, and certified professional trainer instructor. As the best-selling author of the groundbreaking book Dead Pets Don't Lie, his incredible personal story from the gates of death and back again prompted the special investigation that now resides in this breakthrough new work, Time Bomb. Joe Horn, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Thank you for having me. I can't wait to get started.
Well, Joe, you have such an incredible journey that starts long before Dead Pets Don't Lie, long before even Skywatch, long before all this fell into place. And it was your upbringing. It was your journey to faith and the influences and who were the mentors and the ones that spoke into your life that made you become a born-again, sold-out, radically saved person looking for the message of God even in our pets, the message of God even in our food, the message of God in the restorative power of God that you could rest on while you were struggling with life and death. Where did all that begin? What's the genesis of Joe Artis Horn?
Well, I gave my life to the Lord at the age of 4. And I don't know if you want to start there, but I was in my mother's bedroom and I kept hearing this. My dad pastored at a little church called Cornerstone Assembly. And I kept hearing this talk about Jesus coming into people's hearts. What's this thing, Jesus coming into people's hearts? And my parents always felt like children would finally get to an age where they would ask for themselves these questions like, what does it mean to have Jesus in your life? And how do I accept him as a savior, as opposed to just riddle them with biblical truth and then expect for them to immediately identify with where they're coming from before they even have the thought capacity to understand that it's not really a cognitive decision to be a Christian or to accept Jesus as much as just going through the motions. They thought it was always more valuable to let the kids kind of grow up to an age where they got curious enough to ask the questions and it could be more organic. The free will to choose, even at a young age. So I go into my mother's bedroom, and I'm finally at this age. I'm 4 years old, and I still remember it like it was yesterday. And I said, Mom, what's this deal with inviting Jesus into your heart? What's that about? Because in my head, I'm thinking Jesus, and maybe somewhere around your chest, there's a little door, and he shrinks himself, like little kids with their imaginations, right? What is this? So she says, well, he lives in your heart. He's your savior. He redeems you from death. And she's explaining really, really tiny, terms that a 4-year-old can understand. So she led me through the sinner's prayer. And at 4 years old, I asked Jesus to come into my life. And I imagined him going through a little door right above my heart. Now he's just in there. And I thought, 10 feet tall, man, I'm 10 feet tall. Jesus is like in my heart now. And she told me, Joe, do you know what happens every time somebody gives their life to the Lord? And I said, what's that? And she says, the angels celebrate. So now I think, okay, man, all the angels are up there, and I'm thinking these big white winged creatures, and they're celebrating and playing harps. It was just a cool memory. Gave my life to the Lord, didn't always serve him diligently, made a lot of mistakes coming up. My parents had a lot of concerns about my juvenile behavior in my teens. I wrote about that a little bit in the book, When Once We Were a Nation. Had some issues with OCD, behavioral issues kind of coming up through middle school. At one point, I'll just give you a little tiny nugget. At one point, the school board was concerned that maybe I was, experiencing stress at home because of the outbursts with my anger and things like this. And I couldn't have had a greater mom and dad. It was just a combination of maybe the things I was eating through ignorance and a combination of the fact that I had OCD. And back then, a lot of people didn't talk about this stuff. So they would want to diagnose medications and just put kids on meds to kind of simmer their personalities down. And my mom, to her credit, was always resistant to that. She said, he's a strong-willed kid. He's full of spirit. We're not doing that. So I've always been thankful that my mom did not agree to the medication and so forth. By the time I'm in my teens now, I start developing digestional issues. Now, it should be said that at the time, I had dropped out of high school, public high school, and I was homeschooling through Chi Alpha Christian homeschool curriculum to finish my high school diploma at home, and then I was working full-time at my father's catering business. And we didn't cater weddings. It's not that kind of a thing. Do you remember these trucks called deli wagons or lunch trucks?
Sure.
If I say Roach Coach, then everybody knows,
Yes.
Okay. We were very sanitary, but if you say Roach Coach, then all the construction guys, that's what they've kind of tongue-in-cheek named these trucks. I would pull up, open up both of my doors, honk the horn in construction work, blue-collar workers, electrical factories, things like this would come out to the truck. They would buy lunch, get a drink. All of this is processed foods, though. This is my point. Well, I would eat off the truck. So at 16 years old, I'm eating microwave burritos, prefab meals, totally processed foods, nothing organic, nothing healthy, drinking pop all day long. And I'm just 16 and young, so I think I'm getting away with it. I started developing digestional issues. And by the time I was my late 16th year of life, I had an encounter in the restroom that was very alarming. And I won't give you the gruesome details, but I had passed some blood. Mm-hmm. My dad takes me to the doctor. They say, well, it might have been hemorrhoids. We're not sure, but at his age, we don't need to do any further examination. And they kind of went away. But the one question that my doctor asked me was, how much water are you drinking? And I told him, what do you mean water? Just that. How much water are you drinking? I said, well, I probably get plenty in the Mountain Dew I drink, right? And he goes, oh, son, you need water. You need to get off all the pops. You need to drink water. So a lot of my digestional issues started to get better for a while just with the incorporation of water. I also started taking fiber, but not the right kind, and we can unpack that later if you want to. But let me collapse this. That was the beginning of my digestional issues. Into my 20s now, skip ahead, I have a very high recreational job at a youth camp where we're working with children, special needs, youth camps, Bible camps, that kind of stuff. Future Farmers of America, and I am the lead recreation director. So my lifestyle is very active. I'm an LIT for the Red Cross, so that's a lifeguard instructor trainer. I was RecTech certified to run and operate high zip lines, ropes courses, challenge elements for outdoor schools, the whole thing. Very active. We did canoeing, mountain biking, and I was the guy that did all the training and the overseeing of the equipment to make sure that everybody was safe. I start developing conditions that would be revealed to me through a series of late night ER trips with massive infections in my body, things like chronic prostatitis. I'm in my 20s now. Chronic prostatitis. This is inflammation of the prostate, and it creates all kinds of terrible pain for the most sensitive areas that a man can possess. What is the deal? They would put me on like 90-day rounds, 3 months at a time, of a very powerful antibiotic called Cipromax to try to beat these infections out. Now note, nothing was ever mentioned about my diet. Nothing was ever mentioned about the foods that I was eating. And now that I'm at a youth camp, most of this stuff is Food Service of America or Cisco. So once again, all processed. Think of it like eating at a Denny's every meal, every day. Again, diet is never mentioned. I'm building this timeline here. Hopefully this will make sense in a moment. This goes on for almost all of my 20s. And then I add to that infections that come from digestional issues, and now I'm in my late 20s, early 30s. They start wanting to do things like colonoscopies to see why I'm having chronic digestive issues, acid reflux at such a young age. You could add to this diagnoses like painful bladder syndrome. So at a very young age, I start this avalanche of autoimmune style disease, inflammatory conditions, chronic fatigue. So I turn back to things like Jolt. I'm trying to get my energy up. I was always leery of the energy drinks, but I would get it other ways. Lots and lots of sugar, processed foods. Anything I saw that I wanted, I ate. If I wanted Fruit Loops at 1 in the morning, just because, I would do it. In my 30s now, I've had almost 3 colonoscopies, and now I've been diagnosed with another disease called diverticulosis. And what that is, if you're not familiar with it, it is weak spots in the large intestine. Think of like a balloon that gets stretched and then it deflates, and then you stretch it out and then it deflates. Eventually there's these weak little protrusions in the large intestine that create hiding spaces for food and bacteria that then, if left untreated, become infectious. There's bacteria, they fester, and then when it's infected, it's another trip to the emergency room. You need antibiotics all over again, so I'm told, and this becomes chronic. When I had my 3rd colonoscopy, the specialist that told me that you have diverticulosis told me basically what I took to mean a time bomb in my body. He said, by the time that most people have 3 of these infections called diverticulitis, which is the infection that comes from the condition diverticulosis, he says, when you've had 3 of these, most people end up having part of their colon removed because it becomes chronic, it becomes resistant to the antibiotic intervention. There's nothing that can be done, so half of your colon or that section will need to be cut out. So from about 2006 till January of 2017, I lived with this constant countdown, every infection in my large intestine that would create wild pain and another big feverish trip to the emergency room, usually in the middle of the night for whatever reason. I got one step closer in my mind to this time bomb. Now, why was it important to pay attention to this? Because I was told if it was untreated, if it went ignored, if I had that festering pain, it could literally burst the large intestine and fecal matter would pour into my body and it could become septic and I could literally die on an operating table in the middle of the night somewhere. Without a doctor of my choosing or a plan of my choosing. So I lived with this time bomb, this countdown. Every infection, I'm one step closer to this potential death crisis. In January 2017, now note, again, nobody ever mentioned anything to me whatsoever about diet. 2017 rolls around and I end up on that operating table, consenting to 16 inches of my colon being removed, and it was a surgery where I could have died. Praise God, I'm still here. But after the surgery, and this is the pivotal point, after the surgery, my symptoms would get much, much worse.
Wow.
How can this be? I was supposed to get my life back. they're going to cut out this diseased portion of my colon. I'm going to get my energy back. I'm going to be able to play with my kids like a normal person again. Because, Eric, I had gotten to the point where I didn't have the energy. I'm not making this up. I didn't have the energy to get out of my car, hardly make it to the bench. I have this memory of going to a park with my kids, and let's say the bench is 20 yards away. And by the time I got to the bench to sit down, I just got nothing in the tank, just all I can do. And of course, this plays with your psyche. This plays with all kinds of psyche. You're wanting to live and thrive and be there for your children and be a normal person. And you see your friends thriving and living. And so you start to deal with thoughts like, man, am I going to make it? I started to believe that maybe they just hadn't found in my body what was actually killing me, but they just hadn't found it yet. Urethral scopes, Eric. They would go up urethrially to look at my kidneys. They would put iodine in my body to track to see whether my kidneys were performing in a way that they wanted or not. This kind of stuff went on for literally almost 17 years to try to find out what was going on. They told me I had irritable bowel syndrome, that my bowels were inflamed. When I was 16, they told me I had a nervous bowel and not to worry about it. All the while, diet was never mentioned. Specialist after specialist after specialist, nobody ever said a word to me about diet. After the surgery, when my symptoms got much, much worse, the digestional issues, the acid reflux, the inability to stay regular had hit an unprecedented. And it didn't matter how much water I drank. It didn't matter. The symptoms got much, much worse. Finally, I'm on the phone with Mark Taylor. I don't know if you've ever met Mark, but people know him on YouTube as the Fireman Prophet.
We've had him on the phone, on the show.
He's a dear friend of mine. I'm proud of Mark, and he tells me, dude, you're talking to the wrong people. You need to talk to a naturopathic, homeopathic style doctor. Now, when he did this was after the surgery. I'm like, Mark, I don't know what to do, man. I just had 16 inches of my colon removed, and this was months later. So I'm being told now you're healed. You're past the time where any of this should be, scarring or nerve pain or whatever. So what is going on in your colon? We don't know. We don't know what's happening. But literally from the top of my torso to the bottom, just pains and new things too. I had started all this chest pain that I was convinced might be a heart attack. I stayed twice overnight at the ER where they ran cardiograms, echocardiograms. They wanted to know if I had had a stroke. They're pumping my body full of this chemical that makes my heart beat faster so they can monitor whether it has the strength to keep up with normal exercise while I'm laying on a gurney on my side. And they would release me the next day saying, we don't know what's going on. Maybe try to be less stressed out, but it's not your heart. All of this stuff is just inflammatory. It goes on. And I had tried everything that was available to me pharmaceutically through traditional Western medicine. When Mark Taylor said, try a homeopathic, naturopathic doctor, I thought, what have I got to lose? Right. And to my wife's credit, she had been telling me, you need to talk to somebody more from a natural point of view. And I wasn't really hearing her. I thought that for me, it was too late to just drink, in my mind, green tea and hope for the best. I'm like, I got real issues. I need real help. So I finally decided I've got nothing left to lose, and I want to make a really long story way shorter because I want to get into some of the meat of the Time Bomb Project and why we wrote it. None of the pharmaceutical interventions, none of the scans, none of the stuff that was ever offered to me did anything for me. Hydroxyzine for inflammation, none of it did anything but make me sleepy or sicker. None of that stuff was getting to the bottom of this. I started this path of looking for a homeopathic doctor, which led me to Dr. Joshua Vance, who is a chiropractor. He's also an expert in herbalistic medicine, the herbs of the land, and he's a Christian. So he starts quoting scripture verse to me. He has all of the right words. He's good for my psychology. He's very hopeful, and he's the first guy that says, Joe, you don't have to live like this. You can totally reverse this. And I said, well, what is this? He says, you have what's called leaky gut syndrome. I had never heard the words leaky gut syndrome. But after my surgery and my efforts to heal leaky gut syndrome, let me just tell you that in a nutshell, Eric, as I began to put all of those things that I've been talking about into remission, things I was told are genetically or hereditarily things I need to accept, I need to manage my expectations, I need to just get along with getting along and do the best with what I've got left of my life, I find out that leaky gut syndrome is affecting 80% of Americans. who are now, right now, without their knowledge. Some of these people don't know because they aren't showing symptoms they're connecting the dots to yet, or they're being told by their traditional approach doctors that it is, irritable bowel syndrome, or it is chronic fatigue that's brought on by aging, or some people just age faster. And I want to be very clear. Time bomb is not an attack on traditional Western institutionalized medicine. It is really not. We have some wonderful friends in traditional approach medicine. And then there's examples of like wonderful doctors like Dr. Don Colbert, who is a traditional MD, but he's not. He's got an extensive expertise in natural approach medicine as well, who probably would have told me if I had met him 10 years ago, you have leaky gut syndrome, and here's what you got to do to reverse it. What I decided to do with Time Bomb is, as I began to experience the best quality of life I've had in almost 20 years, because of my new understanding that what I was dealing with was underlying to the autoimmune diseases and various things that I was dealing with, I realized that I'm just one of millions of people now that have figured this out through natural approach medicine. They're getting off their medications for things like various heart conditions. My father, who was a type 2 diabetic for over a decade, who was on metformin to manage his diabetes, who was then being told by his doctor, it's becoming diminished and now you need insulin, is totally pre-diabetic now after 6 months of taking the advice of counsel from people like myself and Dr. Josh Vance. I found out that people struggling with fibromyalgia, people struggling with Crohn's disease, people struggling with lupus, ulcerative colitis, pick your autoimmune disease, that they are putting this stuff into remission through their gut care, through this effort to attack naturally this thing called leaky gut syndrome. And I can explain to you what leaky gut syndrome is, but I want to throw you the football and make sure that we're on a target with what you want to cover. I know I've been talking for about 20 minutes, but we can talk about what leaky gut syndrome is, and I can also explain to you more about why we wrote the Time Bomb Project, because it in a sense is to educate people out there that if they're struggling and if they have any one of the things plus more that I've mentioned just now, that it's very likely that it starts in the gut. They're not being told that, and there are ways to find freedom from it through a biblical path of prayer and also taking the herbs of the land, which we know are biblical, to promote the body's ability to heal if we stop damaging it. Now, what is damaging it? And this I'll throw back to you, Eric. It is the processed foods, the food genocide that we're experiencing in this country. It's the pesticides, it's the herbicides, it's the artificial dyes, it's the preservatives. And with that, I throw it back. But that is essentially what is destroying our immune systems and our guts.
Fascinating conversation with Joe Horn, author and co-author of this investigative, private investigator looking into these matters, expose entitled Time Bomb, a Genocide of Deadly Processed Foods. It's a national health epidemic, more pervasive than anyone ever imagined. It's a war on human genetics, and you, my friend, may be the very victim of this, believing that the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, is looking out for you. No, the one person looking out for you, aside from the Lord, is yourself, and you have a responsibility to take control over your own health, what you put into your body. You know, for those who are spiritually afflicted, I always tell them it's not what you're eating, it's what it's eating you. But for those that are physically afflicted, I tell them it's not what's eating you, it's what you're eating. Now, I'm 66 years old, and I have an incredibly healthy lifestyle, tennis player, and eat no real processed foods. I have my own little guilty pleasures, but they don't involve processed foods. And so turning to food, turning to the right foods, looking at things which are probiotic, looking at things which create health in the flora of your body is so essential. Joe has experienced this for himself. Jordan Rubin has experienced this for himself. There are others like Joe who have had to go through this so that you won't have to. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to dig into what you can do if you've expressed and exhibited, or your children are exhibiting the exact same kind of symptoms, ranging from OCD, which if you were really OCD, you would call it CDO. But aside from that point, just a little digress there, if your kids are suffering and you are as well, we've got some answers for you right after this break. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day, you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our 1-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com www.inbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Joe Horn, author of Time Bomb, a genocide of deadly processed foods, a national health epidemic more pervasive than anyone imagined. Don't be its next victim. This is a war on human genetics. Joe Horn, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Eric. It's good to be here.
Joe, you've painted a picture of a suffering man who, from his youth until just in the last 12 months, has been suffering with debilitating intestinal problems that have affected you in every way that is conceivable, because you are what you eat. One of the oldest quotes there is, you are what you eat. In your best-selling book, Dead Pets Don't Lie, you also stated that it's the foods that we're feeding our pets. And people seem to be more concerned about the health of their pet, pay more for veterinarian visits, are willing to invest thousands upon thousands of dollars into operations that could all be avoided, that have been through the food and the genetic inbreeding, could make us much better rescue people and much better dog owners, pet owners, if you will. But we treat them better than we treat ourselves. We would not, we actually do. Many people throw them hot dogs and processed food and think nothing of it. And they think nothing of putting processed foods in their body. But we weren't built this way. God didn't design us this way. He made us originally vegetarians. Then after the flood, meat was introduced into the system, but it did not replace in any way, shape, or form, under God's instruction, this balance. And I think that he clearly states, whether or not it's weights or measures or in any capacity, that a false balance is an abomination to God. So we have to have our life in balance. There are different sources of protein than what we naturally think of meat. There's fish, but we have to find out where our fish is from. It really starts with the food chain and where that food chain originates and what people are doing to pollute it, as to why we have you have leaky gut syndrome and all these other symptoms come into the area of a polluted vessel, a polluted body. And this is what your book Time Bomb is about, a genocide of deadly processed foods. So yes. Joe, take us now. You've now uncovered some incredible secrets to restoring yourself. You are no longer the sick man you were even 12 months ago.
If I had to put a number on it, one being I think I'm dying, 100% I'm 15 years old and filled with vitality, I feel like I live at about a 90%, but I'm still making improvements. I'm still not out of the woods yet. But if I had to stop now and somebody told me that's as good as it gets, I'm a happy guy. I do not suffer like I did for so long there. So that is basically the motivation behind Time Bomb, is because I realize, again, the world's leading holistic doctors and scientists believe now that as many as 80% of Americans are walking around right now unknowing, many of them, with their Time Bomb medical crisis percolating, accumulating in their body, waiting to reveal itself in chronic illness, chronic fatigue, autoimmune disease, or potentially cancer, because of the foods that we're eating in this country. And if people have a hard time accepting that, all you have to do is a basic internet search for disease on the rise. It's just, don't. It's frightening. The point is, most of this begins in the gut. And see, this is something that the world's leading, like, holistic neuroscientists and stuff are just barely beginning to understand, this thing they refer to as the gut-brain connection. Meaning that since 80% of your immune system sits in the gut, if it's under constant attack from pesticides, herbicides, artificial dyes, preservatives, things that God never ever intended to be in your system, and it's happening every single day with almost all Americans, unless they're very, very proactive about being very, very careful. It is absolutely happening to almost everyone, period. That 80% of the immune system resides in the gut. That when that system is under duress, if you can't get a proper night's sleep, if your digestion isn't efficient, if your body isn't able to peel back food particulates and extract from it what it wants, it needs vitamin B, it needs vitamin E. And then you add to the fact that most of the foods in this country, since they're processed, even vegetables, things you would think are healthy, if they don't have pesticides on them, they're very nutritionally void because of big farming. I'll give you an example very quickly. It takes 71 cans of today's modern can of like spinach, your average grocery store spinach, 71 cans to equate the same nutrients that you would have got 30 years ago from one can. So there's this huge depletion in the value that you're getting from food. This is why in Time Bomb, we deal with leaky gut syndrome. We deal with how it begins and how to reverse it. We deal with how it is connected to the gut-brain connection. I don't know if you know this, Eric. You probably do because of your lifestyle, and you've shared with me off the program how you're eating and how you're doing really well. Your blood panels look clean. You're another testimony to the kind of people that are a net result of not eating processed foods, in my view. When your immune system is under constant attack, it never gets a reprieve. It lays back and it allows for these other hyperactive immune disorders. People will end up 58 different ways being diagnosed with a hyperthyroid or some thyroid governing disease that then they're offered medication for instead of reversing what's below that, which is almost always possible through natural medicine to correct what's actually going on below the reason that their thyroid might be hyperactive or their immune system might be hyperactive. Now, you asked me how do things get stored up in the body that we don't want there. The CDC is astonishing. They just revealed that if any random American was randomly blood tested, they might find as many as 29 pesticides in that individual at any given day. Most Americans would find that they have pesticides like the weed killer glyphosate in their body. This comes in almost all grains that are processed, all wheats, your snack crackers, most flour, most breads, cereals. Forget cereals. Cereals is, we don't have time. The point is, Time Bomb deals with leaky gut syndrome. Now, I've said that 2 or 3 times. Very quickly, let me give you just a snapshot of what that is. When you eat foods that are riddled with artificial dyes, preservatives, pesticides, things that God never meant for your body to digest, it can't. And so the labor that's required to try to muscle that through your digestive tract every single day becomes overwhelming. Your body's not able to absorb what it wants, so the lining of your intestines begins to expand to spread the amount of absorbable surface in a desperate effort to get what it needs. That inflammation allows for these tiny, tiny, tiny little microscopic separations in the actual tissue. Undigested food particles from a myriad of things like not enough powerful stomach acid to actually break the food down. This is where a lot of people get GERD or acid reflux. It's not because they have too much acid.
Right.
And so they're put on like pump inhibitors, which actually just warrior against the very thing the body's trying to do, which is make enough acid to break the food down. What happens is the undigested food particles slip through the lining of the intestines and into the bloodstream, where the body then floods them to the liver so that it can attack it to try to get it out of your body in the same way that it would a common cold or like a common bacteria or flu virus or something like this. So when the immune system never gets to rest, it becomes very hyperactive. Very hyperactive. It gets accustomed to deploying soldiers, if you will, to the battlefield, constantly generating white blood cell counts, constantly fueling this war against the disease that we're bringing in our bodies. And what happens is we develop chronic illness. We develop chronic fatigue. We develop these autoimmune diseases. That is why when you reverse this in your gut, there's so much hope for people that have been told their conditions are hereditary.
So, Joe,
Yes.
when we look at this condition that I know many people that have fibromyalgia, they have every kind of broad spectrum illness and are taking some kind of pharmaceutical for it. what foods, so if we know that we go to the regular grocery store and we buy canned
Right.
goods off the regular shelf, as much as the respected names of my youth growing up in Pittsburgh, Heinz
Yes.
and Nabisco, were both right down the street from where I lived. I could smell the Nabisco bakery making Nabisco products as a child, growing up with that smell every morning, waking up to it.
Yes.
We used to trust that the oversight of the government that they were disclosing to us, but the fact is they're not. So where should we be buying our food? What should we be looking for? And how do we know that what we're putting into our bodies? And for mothers and fathers, if you started out early, even in the beginning, then your child may never experience. This is not a guarantee. There's no guarantees in life in any way, but your child, you're greatly reducing the odds that your child will have what you've been told is, quote, genetic and is passed from generation to generation. That's a modern concept today introduced by those that would tell you that, yes, it's genetic because we've genetically modified you to pass this on to your children by the foods that you eat. So, Joe, how do we discern
Sure.
what to get and where to get it?
So that's one of the things that Time Bomb deals with, and I'll give you a couple of examples. People ask questions like, "Is it safe to buy organic, or does it actually help me if I buy foods that have labels that say organic, or is that just a label game? Is there anything that out there that I can possibly trust? Can I afford to eat organic if that's supposed to be what I'm supposed to do?" Those are all questions in the Time Bomb project. I'll give you one example because we're running out of time. If you go to the grocery store, and this is an example of the kind of simple baby steps that we put in the Time Bomb project to try to help take this mountain of research off of the shoulders of working people out there that need to be able to take their kids to soccer and go to their day jobs and just feel overwhelmed with the prospects that they're going to have to research where safe food comes from and how they ever going to afford it. One little step here that they could start today. If you go to a grocery store and you pick up a product and you flip it over and you read the label, and there's more than a dozen ingredients, the list is this long, and you can't pronounce the words, put it back on the shelf. What's going to happen is you're going to find out that that's happening more and more, and you're going to start to catch on to how much of this stuff is probably not good for you.
Right.
Because to think that you could memorize 80,000 and growing, different ingredients, it's a futile endeavor. And here's why. As soon as corporations realize that people are abandoning things like saccharin or aspartame or MSG, they retool the language, and the FDA is okay with this. Those same ingredients are now still in the foods, but they're relabeled things like spice or natural flavors. Does this make sense?
Absolutely.
So there's a label game. So you could never, ever memorize all of the different ways that they trick you through various label interpretations, because as soon as people figure this out and they start abandoning what's bad for them, they retool the labels because to ensure market share, they don't want you leaving their groceries. They need you to think that what you're buying is fine for you. So rather than go down the slippery slope of trying to memorize 80 million ingredients, simply look around the label. And if you see, for example, a bag of black beans and the ingredients are black beans, brown rice, you're already going to be way ahead of the game in terms of eliminating the kinds of foods that are probably damaging your DNA and destroying your physiology, the things that you're passing on to your children and their lineage and so forth. We just don't have time in this program to get into the diminishing of the testosterone of young people today, how estrogen is all over the table, and how this all begins in the gut. They're linking hormonal imbalances, the people that end up on like mood-altering pharmaceutical intervention drugs, back to the gut. Because when your immune system is working overdrive all the time, it's not prioritizing heal cycles at night when you sleep. It's not prioritizing things like the production of testosterone in men, which we need to feel normal and to have energy. I'm a product of that, Eric. I ended up, my testosterone at the worst part of this crux for me was down to 219. And today, after only supplementation, no injections, nothing else, as of 3.5 months ago now, it was at 486 and climbing, just through diet and exercise. just through, excuse me, not even
Yeah,
so much the exercise, just through diet and lifestyle,
right.
I mean.
Joe,
So the point, yes.
yeah, you mentioned something, and as you were mentioning it, something just really quickened in my spirit.
Yes,
If our levels of testosterone, estrogen are being toyed with by the processed foods we're eating, it is no wonder that people are becoming gender confused
that's
when,
exactly
when,
right.
when they are being controlled by their gut to produce extraordinary amounts of estrogen, making them think that they're one way, or extraordinary or depleted amounts of testosterone,
That's right.
making them feel that they are one way. And this is impacting a broader spiritual,
That's
uh,
it.
uh, personal identity crisis, this self-defined movement of today is, I want to be like my mother, 92, that when she goes to the doctor and they say, what medicines do you take? She says, I don't take them. And they say, why not? She said, because you've killed all my friends.
Mm,
All right, she's 92, and her 89-year-old friends are dropping dead. Her 85-year-old friends are dropping dead. Her 90-year-old friends are dropping dead, and they're taking this whole list of medications. She takes no medications and says, why would I take your medicines? That's what's killing all my friends. And so she's 92 and plays golf, sometimes 2, sometimes 3 times a week. So not processed foods, not
that's right.
this kind of lifestyle. But when you take a look at the impact of what you're doing to your the endocrine system, what you're doing to your body chemistry, unless you were, and our audience may not be familiar with chelation therapy, but that's the process of removing your blood, taking it, putting it through filters, taking heavy metals, and really cleaning it and putting it back into your body. There's a natural process that God has created in us for chelation therapy, and that's called the kidneys and the liver.
Yes.
Those are the cleansing devices of the body that your blood passes through to process out toxins, to process out bacterias, to deal with, and if you maintain the proper balance, according to your text and to all the confirming research. I want to, we've only got 5 minutes left in this segment.
Oh, wow.
The one thing I want you to do is to talk about Allie and her role in this as a private investigator. Just a short brief, because all this is validated, verified, confirmed, and exposed, and it is an expose of,
Yes.
of investigative journalistic in that genre, but still God-focused and God-centered, and so that's very important to us. So Allie was a private investigator that you engaged to dig into this to verify this information. Is that
That's
correct?
right. Allie is a wonderful researcher. She's also on our Skywatch team. She does a lot of work with EDI, so distribution. She oversees like when books are being ordered from Amazon and Barnes and Noble. She does a lot with the specific distribution things. She also has to do with content, and she's a ghostwriter, and she's a researcher. I can't say enough about her in the final 4 minutes that you have, but I used her for the Time Bomb project to basically fact check, because while I'm a decent researcher and I'm getting a lot of input from medical professionals that also have signed off on the Time Bomb book, that agree with the statements that are being made in there. They're half the time they're the ones that are educating me on the lead for some of this stuff, and then I'll take the research and run with it. But at the end of the day, not a page was written without Allie, who is a certified, still is a certified private investigator. She went and dug through the smokescreen and was able to say, okay, these comments are real. These are factual with the FDA, the institutions that are running these commercial food organizations and stuff. This is actually their position on this. Here's what they said in their own words. It was wonderful to be able to relax knowing that every page was vetted thoroughly, so that we didn't end up with egg on our face. Now, you had asked me during the break, you may need to cut me off, but it's the perfect segue. When you said that it rose up in your spirit, the idea that gender confusion is a thing,
Yes.
there's a thing called xenoestrogens. These are a byproduct of the plastics that are being manufactured in this country. You drink from them every day when you have anything out of a water bottle, your steering wheel in the car, the vehicles at home, every time you put a bowl through the dishwasher. Your K-cups in the morning when you have a coffee that's run through that plastic lining. They have chemicals like bisphenol A, BPA, or phthalates. And what they do is they act in your body like a synthetic estrogen. It works in men or women, but it's throwing off, and I'm going through this very quickly, it's throwing off our normal God-given hormonal governing systems in our body. They overrule, they're very powerful, and they give men artificial basically transfusions of estrogen that their body can't utilize, which means it suppresses the hormone production of testosterone, and it begins to confuse the body. This is one of the leading causes of breast cancer in men and women, testicular cancer, a myriad of emotional issues. So you wanted me to close the program. Let me sneak this in if I've got 2 minutes. Things to avoid starting immediately.
Yes.
Plastic bottles. This was the perfect segue, so I'm glad we're getting this in. Never drink from a plastic bottle again. You ever notice when you drink from a plastic bottle that's set in the sunlight, it's got that bitter taste? All the sunlight did was activate the obvious flavor of the xenoestrogen. They're there whether you taste it or not, and they are tinkering with your physiology. And then we wonder why, in a nation like this, there is an unprecedented number of gender-confused young people. I don't think it's very confusing. You can also avoid things like sodium nitrates and sodium nitrates. These are in most lunch meats, lots of bacons. Most of your processed meats, flip it over. If the label says sodium nitrates, sodium nitrites, those are linked to a vicious number of growing cancers. So every time you think you're making a healthy option to build a sandwich, think about the nitrate connection. And finally, if somebody wants to get a copy of the Time Bomb book to really unpack this in the long version, we're running a deal at Skywatch TV right now where you get a whole bunch of free stuff with the Time Bomb book, but you can also get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere where fine books are sold.
Joe Horn, chronic illness, obesity, autoimmune disease, cancer. Perhaps you're one of the millions of Americans manifesting symptoms of common chronic illness such as diabetes, Crohn's disease, lupus, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, arthritis, food allergies, leaky gut syndrome, irritable bowel, and any number of these other conditions. Perhaps you're unaware of the time bomb in your system, only in the early warning stages of your body headed towards chronic illness or disease, showing signs of fatigue, brain fog, energy spikes followed by crashes, digestive issues, hormonal imbalance, constant need for antibiotics, or even premature aging. If this is the case, you need Time Bomb. This expose will change your life, and it doesn't matter whether or not you're young, you're middle-aged, you're old, you can reverse all of this by what you eat. Joe Horn, thank you so much for being with us here on Revealing the Truth and revealing the truth of the time bomb ticking within each one of us. God bless you, my friend. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.